Welcome to the Transatlantic Entrepreneur Podcast, the ultimate guide for European founders and businesses looking to grow their revenue with American clients, partners, and investors. The U.S. market is the land of opportunity, where ambitious entrepreneurs break through barriers, win more clients, and scale their success to new heights. Now it's your turn to make your mark. Here's your host, founder of the company Transatlantia and trusted mentor behind Europe's most successful transatlantic entrepreneurs, Christina Rebuffet-Broadus.
Welcome to the Transatlantic Entrepreneur Podcast. Joining us today is Jannik Lawaetz, the CEO and founder of LuggageHero and HotelsHero. And it's an innovative company transforming the way that travelers and hotels manage luggage storage. Jannik, I am very excited to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Christina.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Yeah, great. Looking forward to getting into our discussion. Now, I've noted here that you've got over 8 years of experience, more than 1 million bags stored worldwide, and you've really been at the forefront of creating smart self-service solutions that improve the efficiency and the guest satisfaction for hotels in 40 countries, which is very impressive. So I'm very much looking forward to learning more about that. But really, if I'm correct here, your mission is to modernize the hospitality industry, making it both guest-centric and very operationally seamless. Is that right?
That is completely right, Christina. I don't know how many times I've been traveling and I'm just like an entrepreneur myself. I'm so eager to optimize things, right? I want to build things.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
It all comes from that. Yeah.
Looking for the problems and then looking for the solution to that problem, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, great. Now, a little background for you listening to the podcast. I came across Jannik very recently, I think like a week ago, because Jannik, you posted something on LinkedIn that I would say it went viral. I'm looking at it here. You've got over 4,000 reactions, over almost 1,000 comments, which on LinkedIn today is absolutely huge, and nearly 120 shares of that post. So that really blew up, where you talked about this European startup mindset versus what you've seen in the US. Now, first thing, can you tell us a little bit about where the inspiration or the frustration perhaps for this post came from?
I think most of the frustration is coming from inside.
Okay, yeah. Inside yourself or inside your market?
First of all, I want to start with myself.
Okay, sure.
Because that was the first intention with that post,
Mm-hmm.
was to kind of give food for thought on my own frustrations about growing up in Denmark, having a European mindset when it comes to growth.
Right.
And it just strikes me after so many years being an entrepreneur and being back and forth between the US. Every time I'm in the US, my mindset changes.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
As soon as I'm back, I'm falling right into the European mindset again.
Okay.
That's frustrating.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What is your personal definition when you say European mindset? What are you thinking of? What are you referring to?
I'm mostly referring to our way of being overcautious.
Mm-hmm.
We're really protecting ourselves, being overcautious, not taking too much risk. We want to be safe, and we don't want to step anyone or step on anyone's toes.
Right.
We prefer being in our own little nest, too far away from our comfort zone.
Sure.
And I think most of the things and why we act like that is obviously a lot from our history, but also just the culture itself. Here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that's something that I feel I'm going to say I agree with you on this one. It's something that I've seen as well. I've been living here in France. I'm in France for 20 years now, working with companies for the same amount of time and working with entrepreneurs and startups and investors. I do see that, yeah, there is this difference. And we'll get a little bit into your observations of the US. But what you said, being very cautious, wanting to see proof that something works before getting into it, which I can understand that a healthy bit of critical thinking and skepticism can be a good thing. We don't want to go blindly into anything that anyone, proposes. But also being willing to say, you know what, I don't have the details. I don't know exactly if it's going to work or how it's going to work, but it looks interesting and it looks like there's potential. Let's try it out and let's see what happens. And I found that it takes, and we'll get into this maybe also your experience of clients in Europe versus clients in other countries, but making the decision to sort of take a gamble on a company, on a founder, on a startup, that decision-making process is super slow, I've found, and that can really hurt startups.
Indeed. And I think it's probably what I would focus the most on in terms of the differences between the success rate of Europe versus US is probably that risk. It's the risk-taking part.
Right.
It's two-sided, actually. It's both the risk part for you as an entrepreneur or wanting to be an entrepreneur, actually taking that step away from your corporate job or full-time, whatever you do, or even going straight from studies and right into entrepreneurship.
Right.
That first step of risk is also a cultural thing here in Europe and holding a lot of people back. And then there's the risk side of things from investment sides, so much slower,
right,
and less risky than what you see on the other side of the Atlantic.
Yeah, right. And let's get a little bit into maybe comparing like what you've seen in your own experience. What countries are you present in with your company here in Europe?
I don't think there are many countries that I'm not present in.
Okay. Yeah.
Europe. I think the European Union is it 27 countries, something like that. We're definitely present in all of them.
Okay.
I would say that there are cities and areas where we're more present than others, and the ones that are driving most of our revenue, obviously. But most of the European. Yeah.
Okay, so you're in most European countries, and what about in the U.S.? Where are you present?
In the U.S., we have quite a good presence. Everything from west to east coast.
Okay, great.
We do the biggest travel cities there. We're present. We did start off with the biggest one, Manhattan,
sure,
New York, and then we moved from there. So it's everything: Washington, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, Miami, and so on.
Okay, very very interesting. But let's see. What has been your experience? I would say, when you're going out and you want to maybe sign on some partners or some clients in the European countries versus that same process in the US. What has that been like for you?
It's been interesting.
Okay.
I think I would say that we've had our ups and downs.
Sure. Yeah. It's part of business.
For sure. And I think going a little bit back to things you don't know much about, but still carry out and do it. Right. I think that spirit has probably helped me the most when actually going into the US.
Okay, right.
Because I'm happy and I'm very, very, very happy that there are so many things that I didn't know before entering in there that I needed to learn the hard way. Yeah. But I probably wouldn't have done it if I had knew beforehand.
Okay, so it's a little like just kind of throwing yourself in there and then learning as you go and saying, well, you know what, I'm already here, so I've got to figure this out now, versus if you had maybe taken that sort of more cautious approach and said, I need to study up on everything, I need to learn everything. And then you would have said, you know what, this looks a little complicated. Maybe I'm just going to stay in my comfort zone a little bit. Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Okay. And what are some of the things you mentioned, some of the things that you learned along the way about doing business with Americans? What would you say are some of the key lessons or observations that you've had in doing business with Americans?
I think the biggest difference is that you are speaking in a language and with people who are so entrepreneurial by heart.
Yeah.
And it's actually so much different from the people you're speaking to in Europe.
Okay, yeah.
So with our first product that we launched in Manhattan, New York back then, that was back in 2018.
Okay.
And that was the part of our product that is the marketplace enabling, meaning that you could turn any local business into also being a luggage storage business on the side.
Okay,
like a side hustle, like a side hustle for your
business.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And that was the concept. And first of all, I actually didn't do much research before going there in terms of competition and so on. Obviously, I did some Google searching, but didn't really find anything striking.
Okay, yeah.
Arriving there, we found that we actually did have a competitor there.
Okay, interesting.
That were doing fairly well.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that it didn't scare us away. From now we've taken the decision and we wanted to go full on.
Sure.
But we had this naive imagination that we were first on the market. We were looking into a blue ocean. That was the story we were telling our investors, the story we were telling ourselves.
Right.
So we all set to see that now we wanted to conquer that land over there.
Right.
And then when arriving there, we were just like, fuck. We're not alone.
We're not alone here. Oops. So we thought we were first.
Here.
Yeah.
And they came before us. Fuck.
Yeah.
What are we going to do now?
Yeah. No. I've working with entrepreneurs, and when we often start out, and I'm like, all right, tell me about your business. Tell me about what you do and why you want to go into the US. I want to say not 9 times out of 10, but 7 times out of 10 that they might come in and say, you know what? No, nobody does this in the US. Nobody's doing it yet. We're going to be the first. And I'm like, that's always a little bit of a red flag to me, because I'm like, all right, that means you haven't done your homework. Because either it already exists, but like you said, maybe it's not on Google for some reason, and you have to actually go and see for yourself. Or if it doesn't exist, then maybe to ask yourself, why doesn't this exist? Does that mean that there's maybe not a market for it? But what you said, how you then went to New York and you saw that there was competition and the competition was doing very well. You know, I would say that's a good sign, because it means there's a real need for it. And when there's a real need, you know, there's often room for I mean, the American market is huge. And so just because there are some key players already doesn't mean that there's not room for other people to come in and maybe find a niche or find a specialty or something that's going to set them apart in order to get a piece of that market, even though there's already competition, you know, happening there. So yeah, that was a good move on your part to go in, see what was happening, and then go, all right, how do we get a piece of this pie? And
exactly.
Yeah.
I always refer to, like, you always end up with the Coke and Pepsi dilemma, right?
Exactly.
And you need to choose one of them. So it's not do I want a Coke today? Yes or no. It's like, do I want to choose Pepsi or do I want to choose Coke?
Exactly.
And that's actually the best performance that you can do when they have to choose between two.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I always tell people as well. I mean, for example, you walk into a bookstore, and you look at all of the business books that exist, or all of the self-help books that exist. And yeah, some of them are better than others, but imagine if somebody like Tim Ferriss or James Clear, the guy that wrote Atomic Habits. Imagine if they had gone into a bookstore and said, you know what? There's already about 500 books here. I don't need to write mine. That would have been a real shame. So I'm like, try it. Try to make your space, make your place in that market. What were some of the maybe particularities or differences that you saw perhaps in dealing with American clients?
I think we were very, we were in good hands because, first of all, I did go there on a field trip myself to begin with, and I did some scouting there.
Sure.
And I found it very helpful to find a local contractor, local entrepreneur there who had previous experience with selling stuff to my, you could say, audience.
Yeah.
So leaning up against his way of doing things really helped us a long way. And one of the first things he was like telling us is, when you come here, you need to come with a very strong tagline. You need to be the biggest in something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm European. I'm not used to really use all these big words and stuff. And he was like, no, we need something. We need a statement. We need something. So when I enter that door, I'm like putting my hands down on the desk and saying, you know what? I'm here to tell you the best news today. That is the biggest transatlantic luggage storage company is opening up New York City on the 1st of December.
Yeah.
And I want you to be in on this.
Yeah.
That's what he wanted with confidence to be able to say. And I was like, sure, you can say that because we are.
Right. Yeah.
So
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you need to brag.
Yeah.
And you cannot lie. You need to find that uniqueness and statement that you can use that shows how big you are.
Exactly. That's it.
If you're not big, you can go home. It's like
go big or go home, as we say,
Completely. So I think that was a really good learning from that. You need that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You can't come and just like sneak into a shop and just be in the corner and then say, oh, is it my turn now? And then try and do your pitch from that corner. It's like, no way.
Yeah. It's like, I would say the shift in mindset that I've seen, it's like, we think as entrepreneurs, we need clients. Like that's the reality. We have a business. We need clients so that they can give us money so that our business can succeed and we can pay ourselves and all of that. That's the way it works. But the mindset shift, it's instead of saying, I've got this little thing and I kind of want to sell it, but I have to go and I have to ask people if they're being willing to pay me money for this thing. And you're kind of putting yourself in the position of, a beggar, let's say, putting yourself into that position of, I've got this great thing and I know it's going to help these people and I know it's going to lead to bigger opportunities. And I'm offering you this opportunity to get in on this thing now because I know it's going to help you. And you're going to give me money for it because that's the way that we exchange in our society. But this is really exciting. And I see it that has a potential for you and I want to help you. And you're going to help me and it's going to be a win-win situation for everybody. And going at it in that sort of mindset, I think for us as entrepreneurs, just changes the dynamic and the way that we talk to our clients because we're no longer like kind of being very shy and timid and asking, do you want to give me some money for this thing? And we'll maybe see, but I've got this great thing and I want to get you involved because I see that it's going to work out for you and for me as well. Pretty big mindset shift, I would say, perhaps.
Yeah, very much. And I think the best part of it is that message resonates so well with the entrepreneurs on the other side of the Atlantic.
Right. Yeah.
More so than in Europe, for sure.
Sure. Yeah. Because then of course, like you said, you've got to have some proof and some justifications to sort of back that up. And then you look at it and they analyze it and they decide to take a bet on it or not. Yeah. But if you're going in there and you don't have that confidence already, then you're just never going to cut through the noise.
No. for
Yeah.
sure.
What was the process or the thinking behind the decision to go into the American market, and how soon, I don't know, did you start with, I'm supposing, but correct me if I'm wrong, I'm supposing that you started with the European market and then went to the US. Is that right?
Yeah, but I probably did go to the US way earlier than any of my colleagues from my
Mm,
home country,
okay.
at least what I've been told so far. So we started in Copenhagen in 2016,
Mm-hmm.
and within just a couple of months, we had actually already decided that London would be the next city.
Okay.
So instead of like trying to grow our home market or going more like in Scandinavia, going to Stockholm, going to Oslo,
Mm,
something like that, we were just like, you know what? It only takes 1.5 hour flight from Copenhagen to London.
mm,
We should go there. And that's what we did. So we set up London. We had great success in London
mm,
in 2017. And then halfway into 17, we were like, what's going to be the next city? And then someone argued that, oh, we should stay in the UK. We can go to Liverpool. We can go to
mm.
Manchester. And I was like, no way. We're going to go for the biggest one, and that's going to be Manhattan.
Right.
So that's why we wanted to plant that flag in Manhattan and
Yeah.
say we were first here. We
Yeah.
were not first.
You weren't first,
We
but
wanted to be first, and we wanted to be the biggest. And that's why I said at the beginning, I don't want to launch Manhattan with less than 100 locations signed.
right. Yeah.
We set the bar high from
Sure.
the very beginning, and that was a really good thing we did that early on because
Mm.
it turned out that our competitor, he had like 20 locations there.
Okay. Right. Okay.
So from the very beginning, we were the biggest, and we could use that statement as well. So
Okay.
join the biggest one, or you just want to start with being with the small ones. And
Right. Sure.
that resonates well with the US as
Very
well.
interesting. Okay, yeah. So it was almost from the start. You said, well, of course, we're going to start in our home market. That makes the most sense.
Mm,
But very soon, let's start looking not where is it the most comfortable for us, maybe the Nordic capitals, for example, but where does it make the most sense? London, it's close enough, but it's still a major international hub.
mm, mm.
New York is the next place. And what were some of the, I guess, the bumps along the way, or the mistakes that you made? We all make mistakes along the way. What were some of the ones that you feel like by sharing them, this will help others to perhaps avoid the same mistakes?
I think there's some things that are more like on the paper side of things,
Mm.
boring things, as I used to refer to, but you still
Mm-hmm.
need to have the right setup for it.
Sure.
We just didn't find the right legal counseling from the
Mm.
beginning, so we ended up setting a completely wrong company in the
Okay.
US. We needed to shut that down, open
Mm.
up a new one. Minor details, so it didn't really obstruct most with things there.
Mm.
But I think there's also a little bit of a hustler mentality
Mm-hmm.
in the US, which we
Mm-hmm.
didn't really count in from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
What do you mean by that?
I mean, you need to have your eyes on the target all the time.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying you cannot trust people,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to give them a sense of I'm watching. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
um, I, I I think that's very common for marketplaces like ours. In that
Sure.
case, with LuggageHero, that you kind of connect to people, right?
Right.
You connect a buyer and a seller, and you want the cut in the middle where
Yeah.
the marketplace taking out that cut.
Sure.
And as soon as the seller is kind of seeing his ways of cutting you out,
Mm.
he's gonna
Sure.
go for it. And we were probably a little bit too naive in the beginning with this, that hoping that they would trust it in the same way as in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I found out that the hard way.
Sure.
I think we had a really slow start on everything, and
Mm-hmm.
really frustrated me. I think what saved us was that we needed people on the ground. We needed our
Mm.
people on the ground.
Right.
So my co-founder, my technical co-founder, he
Hmm.
decided to move over there
Okay. Yeah.
to be part of the operation on ground. So he would
Okay.
sit there from his computer,
Yeah.
obviously, but he would have a desk
Right. Yeah.
in
Be
Manhattan.
physically present
Yeah,
in New York. Yeah.
yeah. And then we actually were very lucky with finding an intern.
Okay.
Because we were still very early in funding stage and everything. We had
Okay.
only
Sure. Sure.
received business angels funding at that time,
Okay.
so we needed really to preserve cash.
Yeah. Sure.
So we found an intern actually from Europe, traveling all the way to Manhattan. She was
Hmm.
like, I want an adventure. I'm all up for it. And she was part of that operation on ground, and she was probably part of the reason why we ended up being a great success there, because she
Okay.
needed to go from store to store,
Right.
visit and revisit over and over and over, to just say, we are here.
Yeah.
We are here to support you in the best
Right.
possible way, and amplifying as well that don't play tricks on us.
Right. Okay. Like, yeah, just saying like, hey, we're here, we can do business together.
Yeah.
But we have to, each of us, and I think that works both ways, make sure that everybody's playing fairly, let's say. Right.
Exactly. And I think we learned that the hard way, especially with one. I remember that very clearly. We had one customer where we had to change the storage location for her. So we
Mm.
made a booking on behalf of her to another location.
Okay.
And she said, I'm going to go there now. And I was fine. Go there and check yourself in and go out and have a great peace of mind.
Yeah.
And I was sitting watching the computer, and I was like, what's going on? Because she's not checking in that store.
Mm.
And I reached out to the store and I said, did someone show up? And the store was like, no one showed up. There's no one here. And I was like, that's weird. And then I got a hold on the customer, and she was like, oh, everything is fine. I handed over my things. I paid it. And I was like, paid it? How did you pay?
Yeah.
And she said, oh, I just paid in cash. I was like, fuck.
Ah.
We have a problem.
Right. Okay. Right. Because I guess the vendor, the store owner, let's say,
Yeah.
took the
Yeah.
business for themselves. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, right.
So we learned that the hard way. We learned that we needed someone on the ground. We needed someone to go down to these shops if they didn't behave,
Sure.
give them a first warning, and
Yeah.
then second time you're off.
Right.
And
Sure.
she literally went down to some of these stores and took the sign away from them.
Oh, right. Yeah.
We had signs on the streets back then saying,
Sure. Yeah.
like storage here, $1 an hour.
Right.
She went down there and she just took that sign and she just ran off.
It's
Because
like,
these store owners were like, no, don't take the sign, because
Yeah.
they were hoping people would just go in and pay in cash. Right?
yeah, right. And I would say that maybe that is a difference. You mentioned sort of the difference between like what we do here in Europe, where it might be like trust based or a bit relationship based, etc. Another big difference that I've seen in the US, of course, we like to stereotype and make the joke that Americans always sue people for hot coffee or things like that. But it's true that in the US business environment, it is one of the reasons that as soon as you start getting into a business relationship, you want to call in a lawyer. And here, I'm not sure how it works in Denmark, but in France at least, you call in the lawyer as like the very last resort when you haven't been able to solve a problem in a more human manner, person to person. Whereas in the US, it's kind of like, let's call in the lawyers from the beginning. We draft up the contract. We make sure that everything is very clear. It's in writing. So there is no room for interpret, hey, you took the cash. This is clearly against what we agreed on. It's written right here. And then you come in and then you figure out what you do. But I feel like a lot of European entrepreneurs and companies, they don't have that reflex to say, we're going to start going into a business agreement. First thing we got to do is get it all on paper and write it out and spell it out. How is this going to work? What are the conditions? Because if there is ever an issue, you're not having to go down there and run down there and take the sign away and try to sort it out yourself. Because of course, as we know in American society, it can sometimes turn very violent, and we don't want that to happen. So yeah,
exactly. That's true. That's
right.
true.
Yeah. And what about, so you said that you are present in a lot of different places in the US. How about any differences that you've noticed, when dealing with people in New York versus California or Texas or Florida, or any differences you've noticed
one
there?
of the things we learned when moving on from Manhattan and New York was actually that we thought we could really use it as a statement to say that everyone is using us in New York, is really great here. But as soon as we entered like markets like in Chicago, and we were like proud that we were from New York and doing this and this, they were all like, we don't fucking care. So
yeah, that's New York. It's not Chicago.
Yeah, and so we don't care about New York. It's like that's an entire different world. We're in Chicago now. We're doing business differently here.
Right. Yeah.
We're not like them.
Yeah.
So that was I thought it was more be like we, but it was more like them.
Right.
So
yeah. So you got to talk to that client specifically and their specific.
Much. You need to speak to their heart, to their business. Why is it making a difference to me? I don't fucking care about New York.
Yeah, right. Like New York, that's New York. Nobody,
Yeah. So
why do we care about New York?
We almost stopped just saying that we had launched in New York, and just saying now we're going to launch Chicago, and we're going to do it very successfully.
Okay. So it's almost like, you said when you went into New York, you were going in and saying, hey, we've got this great opportunity. We're doing these big things here in New York, taking that same argument and say, hey, we're coming into Chicago. We're doing big things in Chicago. Let's make a deal. That's interesting, because what I've heard from a lot of people is they say, when they're building up here in Europe, the fact that they have succeeded somewhere in the US does become a very strong argument. Hey, we're in New York. People in New York love us. We're doing big things there. Hey, all right, you want to come over and do it in Paris or Madrid? You're doing it in New York. It's got to be good. Interesting that doesn't work in the US. Yeah.
Yeah, or at least it didn't work for us.
Right. Yeah, sure. Right.
In those areas where we went. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And so now I think you said that you've got most of your business is done in in the US. Is that right?
So 1/3 of our business is actually coming from the US.
Yeah.
And that is actually despite the fact that we currently have no one operational working from the US.
Okay. All right.
So it's something we're working on. I would say now that we are entering 2025 with a lot of new stuff, but we've actually been doing fairly okay without. Yeah. It's not something I would recommend beginning with, for sure. But there are times where you can actually rely on the business that you've set up.
Okay, right. That's what I was going to ask you, because you said when you went in and you were opening New York, you sent your co-founder over there, but now you have no one on the ground over there. So how are you getting your American clients without having someone on the ground?
Yeah, and we've learned since COVID that we can do a lot of the expansion remotely by phone.
Sure.
So we have a remote team that sits and calls these locations remotely, and they work in different time zones, so they can like take different parts of the world. So that's actually how we operate now, versus our way before COVID on actually just going from door to door.
Okay, right.
That was a heavy operation, but probably also the fastest one. When it comes to execution, but definitely not the cheapest.
Sure. Right. Yeah, exactly. So maybe it's also a question of looking at the return on the investment, both in financial terms, like what is this costing me in money versus how many contracts are we signing, but also in terms of, just energy and time and human resources. And do you have someone on your team willing to maybe take their family over to a new country and set up the business for a couple of years? Yeah, very interesting.
And hitting on that subject, we did actually do exactly that, Christina, in 22. But I don't know if you want to save that for later.
Okay, well, we might have to do a follow-up episode later in the year and see how 2025 went for you in the U.S. market. Yeah, right. And a final question to get into here. I've like I said, I found you on LinkedIn because you had that one post that went viral, and then I've been following your posts since, and I love them. I'm like, oh, this is great. And you're talking about the differences that you've seen as a Danish entrepreneur, and then your experience in the US or globally as well. So you're quite active on LinkedIn. First of all, what motivates you to do that? Because I know that a lot of founders, they either feel like they don't have anything to say, or they don't have the time to say it, or social media, it's not my thing. What's the drive and the motivation for you behind your LinkedIn activity?
A lot of people ask me that, Christina. So I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can exactly pinpoint the answer, but I can just say how it helps me. Because being founders, entrepreneurs, you can sometimes feel being alone,
Sure.
aloneness. And I think one of the reasons that I'm so active on LinkedIn and just putting out my thoughts and everything is because you're so alone with things.
Yeah.
So you need some place to kind of get it out there and get some feedback, reactions, and that's basically it. And it works really well for me to kind of fire myself up. And I can give you an example on how this actually works within the company as well.
Sure.
Because obviously my entire team, my co-founders, they watch what I put up on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
And we did have a conversation yesterday in management, and we were talking about 25 goals and what we wanted to achieve and everything. And we were discussing different things. And then suddenly my co-founder, he said, "But Jannik, remember what you said on LinkedIn about your European mindset? Isn't that exactly what we're dealing with at this moment? We're talking too much within the comfort zone. We need to break out of that European mindset."
Okay.
And that's what you said yourself. And I
Yeah.
was like, and yes, you're absolutely right.
You're like, damn it.
Let's take this conversation from the beginning then, and then let's see what is holding us back from doing something that is even bigger. So when I fire something off on LinkedIn, I get a response. I kind of tell the world, but I tell myself as well, you can do this. So
Interesting.
It's a
Yeah.
self-motivation thing to put something out there, because you're kind of putting your head to it. And that's why I actually started using here in end of 24 and start of 25. I actually take a selfie of myself.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons I'm doing it is that it's me. This is a reflection on my thoughts. This is a reflection on what I want to achieve. That's why I'm putting my face on it.
Sure.
And it's also a commitment. I'm committing myself to this. And I've heard from so many people, and I've heard from my investors as well, my network, and so that it's so helpful for them as well to follow that journey. From that side of things as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because I feel like it's like you said, you're showing up, but you're showing people who you are. I mean, I'm sure that I don't know what your process is, but I'm sure you don't just kind of like wake up and, what do I want to write? And you probably write it out and then reread it and maybe think about it and say, no, maybe I don't want to say this, or maybe I want to say, like, I'm sure there's a little bit of reflection that goes into it. But it's also, I mean, it's you, and who do we do business with? It's people that we feel like we know them. We like what they're saying. I mean, I'm sure I haven't read all 1,000 comments on your posts, but I'm sure that there are some where they were like, Jannik, this is total BS what you're saying, and I totally don't agree. And blah, I'm sure you got a couple of haters, because we all do. But there's probably a lot more people where that message resonates with them, and they're like, you know what, Jannik, I like what he's doing. I like what he's saying. Yeah. And they see you regularly and they come to know you. They like what you're doing or what you're saying. They come to trust you. And then when it comes time to maybe them to become a client, them to invest in your company, or to put you in relation with, in contact with somebody, that just makes that process so much easier than if you're, reaching out blindly and trying to, get a client or get a contact. Yeah.
It does. I don't think the LinkedIn postings should be the first priority to land customers or land investors or so. I think it needs to be more natural, and and I think it should be more authentic. I would like that LinkedIn become more authentic, and I think we're seeing a trend now that people are more vulnerable when posting.
Yeah.
And actually, a little bit ahead of when we started connecting on LinkedIn, I did another post, which I think you can find way below in my activity history on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But it was actually one that for a long time was really hitting out there and got a huge ton of attention.
Yeah.
And that was actually me sitting in a chair with holding a passport.
Yeah.
And I was actually really, really vulnerable at that time, because the reason I was sitting there with my passport was because I was going to the US, but not because I was happy with it, but because I had just lost a 200K customer the week before.
Right. Yeah.
So and I don't know what really went through my mind when putting that post up, but I was sitting there in the airport. I was waiting for my colleague to join, and I was thinking about the situation, and I was actually not that happy at that time, because it was like, I have to leave my family now for a couple of weeks. It was during the December month, which is usually like you're with your family. I have boys as well, and a wife here, and I was like, it's actually not what I'm really set up for right now, mindset wise. And I'm actually going here because I feel like I have disappointed myself. I've let myself down. I haven't done my proper homework. I haven't done enough attention on this client. And then now they canceled the deal. And even though I cannot save the deal by going there, I need to go there to kind of show some appreciation for the years we've been working together, and really, really deepening on, really finding and understanding, why did I lose you? So I can learn from that experience.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I needed to step into that pain. It was a painful situation, and I needed to share that situation as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And I did that on LinkedIn, and that really resonated well with people. That I think people are really, really shy of sometimes showing the downsides of their business, because they're so afraid that, oh my God, if someone sees that I'm losing customers, they're like, I don't want to invest in that business. I don't want to deal with that person. And if I'm a client as well, I should perhaps do the same.
Right, exactly.
And so that's the thoughts that come through your mind when thinking, should I post this? No. I only want to post when I have a new customer and agree with me that I can post this. And we all see that from time to time. And yes, that's great. But if you really want to be truly authentic, you also need to show the downsides of things.
Exactly. I mean, it's a little like if we're only posting the things about how great everything is and how, I'm looking at that post now, and I see you with your passport looking pretty unhappy about that. But if we're only showing those pictures that we got our passport because we're going to sign a new deal, et cetera, and everything looks like it's all going great and it's all perfect, that's nice to share those victories. But then if we only see that, I would almost question, like, what are they hiding? First of all, I would probably be like, well, what are they doing right that I'm not doing? Because that's not I've got problems in my business. What do they know that I don't know? So you're contributing to like downgrading everyone's mental health as entrepreneurs. But also, I'm like, I don't think they're telling the whole story. And there's maybe something now that I can't trust, because I know every single business, even if you are Elon, especially if you're Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, whatever, all these people that we might look up to and admire for what they've done, they've had, they've lost clients, they've lost, they're had huge disasters to have to try to manage because of something they did. And that is just a part of nobody goes through life or business and it's all win, 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 perfect, great, yoo-hoo, victory, small win, whatever. Like that doesn't happen. And being able to share that and say, you know what, oops, we have a problem here. This is part of my life. I feel like it helps to create that authenticity that sometimes we feel like is missing on social networks. Yeah,
it does really. And I saw another LinkedIn post today from Tony Robbins, and he said, it's from your problems that you grow the most.
Yeah, exactly.
And acknowledging your problems and your weaknesses and actually saying them out loud.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you do it on LinkedIn or if you use some other forum, whatever makes you comfortable, is from recognizing those and dealing with them firsthand, where you grow the most. And the better you are at tackling things like this, the more successful you will become.
Exactly. And showing people, yeah, we have problems like everybody, that's normal, but I know how to, I can deal with them. And this is how I'm going to deal with them. And I feel like that inspires people almost more because they see, yeah, everybody can do it when it's going well, but the people that are able to do it when the going gets tough are the ones that are going to come out on top in the end.
For sure.
All right, Jannik, is there anything you would like to leave us with? Any words of wisdom, inspiration, personal motto, anything to close off?
To close it off, and especially with the US in mind for the listeners that want to go there and conquer the world, I would really urge them to do that. I would also say that whenever times are the worst when you do this, whenever you feel most let down and most pessimistic about everything, I have a little bit of a story to that.
Yeah.
And it was actually when we were in New York, we had rented this small apartment. We were sitting, my co-founder, my intern, and myself, and we were just like looking at each other, being frustrated that we had so little traction and small bookings every day. I was like, I remember telling my intern back then, we need 10 bookings a day. We need 10 bookings a day. And she was like looking at me saying, that's impossible. That is impossible. I was like, no, it's not impossible. We need that. And she's like, no, it's impossible. And then the day after, I remember waking up and my intern said, something weird is going on online. We were just tagged on Twitter. Back then it was Twitter, not X.
Yeah.
We were just tagged in Twitter. I was like, we don't have a Twitter profile, but whatever. And she was like, it's really weird. It says New York Times. I was like, what are you talking about? And she showed me on Twitter. I was like, Julie, do you know that New York Times just tagged us because they made an article about us? And she's like, did they? I was like, that's what they tagged us about. I was like, I went
oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah, I just mapped my computer out. It was like typed New York Times. I was like, and there it was, a giant picture of one of our stores in Copenhagen, actually, with a sign outside of the store. And then like luggage stores in New York, in New York is now going on from local businesses. And I was like, Julie, we have an article in New York Times. I was like,
and you didn't even have to pay for it. It's like,
what's going on here? So that was something. I just want to say this story because when you really feel the most down, there's something waiting for you out there, and just keep doing your thing.
Yeah,
keep grinding, because you will hit it. Yeah. And from that day, we didn't have to look back. We were just hitting it off.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like we're down, and we're almost giving up, and then. We're just this close.
Yeah, we're so close, and you don't know how close you are.
Exactly.
Wait it out, please. Wait it out.
Yeah. So you gotta keep at it, even just trust the process and enjoy the journey, even when that journey is hard and, discouraging and everything. Also, I love that story. Fabulous story. Yeah, great. Okay. Jannik, first of all, where anyone who wants to follow you, the messages that you're sharing, your inspiration, where can they find you on the internet?
So they would need definitely to go on my LinkedIn, because that is my main channel.
Yeah, all right.
So follow me in there, or even connect with me. I'll accept the connection. I accept everyone. That's definitely the first place to go. Sure, it's always been working best for me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I'm not that fancy. So,
all right. Yeah. I'll put a link to your profile in the notes to the podcast. And if someone is, interested in maybe signing up as a partner, as a client of yours to offer the services of LuggageHero, where can they go to learn more about your business and perhaps some business opportunities?
Oh, that's nice of you to ask, Christina. So the two different businesses we're doing now is that one is the LuggageHero, so that's the kind of side hustling for local shops to make a good revenue on the side. So they should just go on LuggageHero and sign up as a shop. That will be for sure helpful for their additional revenue stream. And then the second business side is HotelsHero. And HotelsHero is for hoteliers, hotel managers, to deal with their own guest luggage, to make it safe, more efficient. That's what we're dealing with there, with all our expertise from the years of doing the marketplace. That's what we turned into a new brand. So that's HotelsHero. So for that part,
All right. No, that sounds great. Yeah. So I guess they can just go onto the websites. They can Google that. They'll find you and
for sure, or definitely find it on my LinkedIn profile.
Thank you very much, Jannik. We're going to put all the links into the notes so that people can find you and connect with you for inspiration or for business deals, perhaps. And otherwise, I just want to say thank you very much for taking nearly an hour out of your day to come and talk with me. I am very happy to learn more. I'm going to be following you and commenting on your things on LinkedIn because I just love what you're doing. And all the best to you for a very happy, prosperous, and enjoyable 2025.
Thank you for having me here, Christina.
Thanks.
Ready to get more American clients and grow your revenue in the U.S. market? Join our next Transatlantic Entrepreneur Workshop and start building your U.S. client pipeline today. Reserve your spot now using the link in the show notes. Set your course, take bold action, and let's chart your course to success in the U.S.